Welcome to Coast to Coast Sports, NFL edition. I'm your host, Nate Smith. Today, we got a full slate of NFL topics for you, but specifically, we'll be covering the NFC. We'll talk fantasy, who are the studs and duds. We'll talk rookies who are ready to ball. And we'll tell you which teams are set up to win the conference title. All that and next. Let's go! So here for our first segment, we have our two NFL analysts to my left. We have Cristian Egurbide and we have Vinny Asito with us here to break down the NFC. So Cristian, I'll start with you, good sir. For the NFC, really competitive division, a lot of top-heavy teams. Who do you think is the favorite to win the conference right now?
Well, I think the favorite right now has got to be the Dallas Cowboys. They won it last year going 13-3, and really I don't think they've experienced any drop-off as a team. We know Ezekiel Elliott is going to miss a few games at the start of the season, but I think they have the running backs to kind of back him up with Alfred Morris, so they won't really miss a beat too much there. I still think Dak Prescott is for real. I don't think his rookie season was a fluke. I really think he'll do well and lead them to at least 11, 12 wins in the division.
Yeah, they did come off an incredible year last year, so it'll be interesting to see how they rebound. Vinny, what's your pick for favorite in the NFC?
I'm actually going to stay in the NFC East, but I'm going to go with the New York Giants. Okay. Coming off a strong year last year, 11-5, making the playoffs for the first time in a few years. Strong team behind new head coach Ben McAdoo. Made the playoffs in his first year as a head coach. They decided to bring in Brandon Marshall, so you're working with Brandon Marshall now alongside Odell Beckham and Sterling Shepard. Drafted a big tight end for the first time in Evan Ingram out of Ole Miss. Yeah. So a lot of people refer to him as a matchup nightmare, they say. So I think he'll be able to open up the field for them and definitely make that offense become elite along with the defense they have. Landon Collins been the heart and soul of that defense so far. So looking forward to a big year with them, and I think they take the NFC.
Yeah, those two, that division overall is just going to be extremely tough. Yeah. The NFC East will be very competitive for sure. For me, my choice is the Atlanta Falcons, kind of the easy one. They were in the Super Bowl last year. But I just think, a lot of people believe in that Super Bowl hangover. I just don't think it's going to happen with that squad. Matt Ryan has proven himself as a top 10 quarterback in the league, sometimes top 5. He can play very well at times. And just that offense with Julio Jones, Devontae Freeman, and a young defense that really is getting better and better. Their secondary was pretty impressive against the Patriots for 3.5 quarters. Kind of fell off there at the end with that 28-3 blown lead. But I think the Falcons are a team that Dan Quinn's a solid head coach defensively. Their secondary has improved. They have young linebackers. So I think Atlanta is going to be a team for me that'll be at the top once again. Welcome back in here, folks. What we're getting now is to the sleepers of the NFC, the teams who have talented rosters but maybe didn't quite put it together last year. So, Vinny, I'll start with you on this one. For your sleeper in the NFC, who do you got?
I'm going to go with the Carolina Panthers. A lot of people forget they're just 2 years removed from a Super Bowl. You got Cam Newton and Kelvin Benjamin coming back now healthy this year. Defensive side of the ball, you got Star Lotulelei and Quan Short up front. Right behind them, you got Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly, who are arguably two of the best linebackers in the league. Yeah. I just think with Cam Newton coming back and the athleticism he has, and not to mention they brought in Christian McCaffrey as a rookie, so I think that offense is ready to shine, and if their defense holds up, I think they can be right back in the picture. Just
one question for you, though. Obviously Cam Newton winning that MVP 2 years ago, but last season a significant drop-off. Do you think he's the guy? Is he the answer there for that franchise? Do you think he's the guy they can win with?
I think so. I don't think there's any reason he is not. He's proven himself. He made it to a Super Bowl. Obviously didn't get the job done, but right. I think as long as he stays healthy, avoids getting hit big like he has been, no reason they can be right back in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. All right, Cristian, moving on to you. Who do you think your sleeper is in the NFC?
My sleeper pick for the NFC is actually the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
They are in a tough division. They got to play Green Bay and Detroit, but I think Green Bay might be coming to the end of their reign, quite honestly, in that NFC North. And I think the Vikings are a strong team. They have a great defense. Harrison Smith, Xavier Rhodes, Anthony Barr. They've got a lot of studs on that defensive side of the ball. And a lot of people forget that last year they came out really hot, and I think they were 5-0 to start off the season, and then mid-season they kind of lost track of it. But I think if they come out hot again and can keep that going throughout the season, they'll have a great year this year.
How much of an advantage do you think it is that Sam Bradford has had an entire offseason within that program now?
Well, I think it's a huge advantage because when you think about last season, he came in and had to learn the offense in a matter of, I think, just a month and a half or so before the season.
Time, yeah.
So seeing that he had to do that so quickly and still came out and played pretty well, I think another year for him is only going to help him.
Yeah. For me, my sleeper pick is actually right here in Phoenix with the Arizona Cardinals. A team with a lot of defensive talent. We're talking about a lot of defensive-heavy teams here, it seems like. But I mean, defense wins, and the Arizona Cardinals have a great roster. Tyrann Mathieu, Deion Buchanan, he's battling some health issues right now, but if he's healthy. They did lose Calais Campbell, but they have good talent up front still with Chandler Jones and Marcus Golden. So I think they'll be able to get after the passer. And people forget that 2 years ago, Carson Palmer had one of the best seasons for a quarterback in the entire league. The year Cam won MVP, he was right up there with the best of them in completions and yards. Their receiving core is a little questionable. You got Fitzgerald, and then you got Jerron Brown, John Brown, and J.J. Nelson. So we'll see how that pans out. But, I mean, David Johnson, best running back in the league, in my opinion.
He's a freak.
I think for me, it's got to be the Cardinals. All right, so switching gears a little bit. We talked about favorites, we talked about sleepers. Now, what's a team that just has no hope? What's a team that's either tanking or it just is screwed?
Well, you just said the Cardinals. I think within that division, the Los Angeles Rams are really a team that I think need a few more years in order to get there to win their a playoff contender. You know, Jared Goff's young, he's going to develop. They still have Todd Gurley, who isn't even in his prime yet, so give him a few more years. He'll be, you know, an even scarier ball carrier. But they just don't have the receiving core right now to do it, and their defense has some holes in it. I think the Rams will struggle again this year.
Yeah, even after acquiring Sammy Watkins, I still don't think they have enough offensive firepower, so we shall see. Vinny, what about you? Who's your squad?
I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers.
Niners?
Yep.
Right.
You know, they got Reuben Foster now as a rookie coming in. He's been showing up in the preseason, but I'm not necessarily think they're going to tank, but I don't think Brian Hoyer's the answer there at QB. Wide receiving core is questionable. You got Carlos Hyde running the ball, and just don't think they're ready yet. Give them another maybe 3-4 years until they're contending again, but I don't think it's their time yet.
Interesting. No, I agree with all your points, though. It's going to be a team that struggles. For me, I got to go the Chicago Bears. Yeah, I've got a big Midwest population out here in Arizona, so we got some Bears fans over here. But I just think Chicago, they don't have much. I mean, they got Mitch Trubisky. They traded up to get him, and we don't even know if he'll pan out. Out of North Carolina, I mean, he really hasn't faced that many teams or even close. I mean, obviously college is not even close to NFL talent, but playing in the ACC, the only real squad you face is Clemson. So I just think that, and it takes time. Young quarterbacks coming in, it takes time for them to transition to the offense. They do have some good young pieces on defense, and Jordan Howard is a stud at running back, but their receiving core is depleted, and yeah, they're going to need some help out in Chicago. All right after this, we will be talking some rookie expectations. Keep it right here. We're right back here with Coast to Coast NFL Edition. I'm Nate Smith. Thanks for joining us. Moving on now to our next slate of topics, we'll be talking rookie expectations. So, guys, obviously every year, lots of talented young men get drafted in the NFL. Cristian, who do you have your eye on here in 2017?
Well, Vinny alluded to him earlier. My guy is Reuben Foster, linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. He's out of the University of Alabama. We know that defense breeds just absolute dogs, a lot of them in the NFL. And, you know, the San Francisco 49ers have a lineage at the linebacker spot. Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, some of these guys that have played really well there. And I think Reuben Foster is going to be one of those guys, maybe not quite that level this year, but I think he'll build towards that and have a great year running around, making tackles, making plays on defense. Yeah,
their defense has been improving. Also with the acquisition of Solomon Thomas, too, drafting him. That's a big piece.
He's huge.
All right, Vinny, who's your rookie to look out for?
I'm going to be staying at the University of Alabama, actually. Go with O.J. Howard.
Seems to be a talented
place. I mean, they just produce. So, I mean, he's a freak, 6'6", 240. In a good system in Tampa Bay. You got Jameis Winston as quarterback, and they just brought in Deshaun Jackson. You got Mike Evans on the other side. So I think all he can do is open up that field, and that'll be great for them. Yeah,
he'll definitely be a weapon for Jameis in that offense. It'll be interesting to see this year. For me, I'm going to the other side of the country, West Coast, Stanford man, Christian McCaffrey. Going at number 8 overall to Carolina. He really was a very talented player at Stanford. I mean, when Derrick Henry won that Heisman over him, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people, others, they thought McCaffrey should have won it that year. You know, he broke all kinds of records for Stanford, all-purpose yardage. I mean, the guy is just an absolute workhorse. He's not that big, but he's going to get the job done, and I think it won't take him very long to take the job from Jonathan Stewart, who's been there for a while. I think Cam Newton will love having a very lethal weapon out of the backfield like that. And he can catch the ball, too. He's a great receiver. People raved about him at the Combine, so I think Christian McCaffrey, for me, is the rookie to watch. Right after this, keep it here, we will discuss the fantasy implications of anyone in the NFC. Welcome back in, folks. Thanks for joining us here on Coast to Coast Sports NFL Edition. Our next segment is one that people will love, I guarantee it. We're talking some fantasy football, folks. Who's on your team? Who do you need? Who's a sleeper? We got it all for you right here. Vinny, I'll start with you. We'll start in the studs category. Who do you have to have on your NFL roster for fantasy?
I'm going to go with Stephon Diggs. You know, I mean, he had a great year last year. He's got Adam Thielen on the other side of him, but especially if you're talking PPR league, Stephon Diggs is someone you want. There were a few times last year he had 10, 11, 12 catches a game, and you can't beat that. I mean, if you want a guy who's going to produce every week, Stephon Diggs is who you want on your team.
Yeah, staying in Minnesota, honestly, another interesting find would be Dalvin Cook. That offense, I think, is going to take some big steps forward this year, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Cray, who's your stud for fantasy this season?
My stud, a guy who I think is going to be a top 5 wide receiver in the league, is Mike Evans out of Tampa Bay. We've already talked a little bit about the Buccaneers and how we think their offense is going to be electric this year. And really, I mean, Deshaun Jackson's a weapon, O.J. Howard out of Alabama. And depending on which version of Doug Martin we get, you know, whether
Never
we get
know.
the electrifying Doug Martin
Could
who
be
can,
dancing
you know,
Doug. Al
yeah.
Hard Knocks, he's been
Big
dancing a lot.
question mark.
yeah, or, you know, the injured, you know, not a 100% Doug Martin.
Right.
Depending on that, it'll open up the field for Mike Evans to really stretch the field, make those long receptions that he's known to make. But I just think he's such an electric player. I don't see him not being in the top 5 for wide receivers.
Absolutely. For me, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to keep it with Green Bay, arguably the most explosive offense in the entire league. I'm going to go Jordy Nelson for my pick.
Nice.
You know, Jordy, that receiving core is disgusting to begin with. You got Randall Cobb, you got Jordy Nelson, you got Devontae Adams. They just brought in Martellus Bennett. Not to mention when you have Rodgers slinging you the ball. I mean, come on. A lot of people have him as a top 5, top 6 receiver this season, and that's hard to argue with. I mean, all the man does is produce. So for me, it's got to be Jordy Nelson. Moving on here, though, so we've talked about the studs, the guys we expect to do well, the guys that most likely will do well. Now, flipping the scripts a little bit, who are some guys that maybe have high expectations or are in new situations? We'll go with the duds. Who's a dud for you, Cristian?
Well, you just talked about Green Bay, so I'll stay there. Randall Cobb, I feel, is going to be my dud for this year. You talked about Jordy Nelson, and as much of a stud as he is, when he was out during that 2015 season, it was up to Randall Cobb to kind of step into the, you know, number 1 wide receiver role, and he didn't do a good job of that. So that kind of, since that season, he's been kind of downgrading with his production. So I don't see that changing this year. They got Martellus Bennett. You would think that would, you know, open up some lanes for him, but I really think Randall Cobb's time as a premier receiver has passed. I think he's maybe a flex option this year, but nothing more than that.
So, Vinny, who's your dud?
I'm going to go with AP and Mark Ingram in New Orleans. People aren't really sure about how AP and how he's going to be doing this year. Coming in with a new system, people were quite the question mark about why he ended up in New Orleans. You know, people thought maybe he wanted to be the guy on one of these teams, but now he'll be splitting carries with Mark Ingram. And not to mention, you got Michael Thomas there along with Kobe Fleener. So I think Drew Brees will be slinging the ball all season. So backfield's quite the question mark.
I agree, and not to mention that's a pass-heavy offense to begin with.
Definitely.
So I feel like you don't want to own any running backs in that backfield. I'm going to piggyback off you and go to a different backfield. Other side of the country, though, Seattle, Washington. They got Larry Rawls. Well, not Larry Rawls. I'm sorry. Thomas Rawls and Eddie Lacy. I mean, both of those guys. Thomas Rawls, I've heard in practice, has looked really explosive, but he just can't stay healthy. I think it's 2 seasons in a row now where he's been injured. So, and a guy like Eddie Lacy, who since his rookie year in Green Bay has just dropped in production every single year.
And raised in pounds.
Raised in pounds, dropped in production. Not a good recipe for success, folks. So yeah, Seattle backfield is just something I would stay away from in fantasy, because Rawls and Lacy, no matter who ends up starting there, they drafted a rookie named Chris Carson. He might honestly be the guy halfway through the season. So I think that's a situation you just want to avoid altogether. And that'll just about do it for us, folks. Thanks for stopping in on Coast to Coast Sports NFL Edition. We appreciate your views. Have a great weekend.